So for the last year, the Bose Smart Soundbar 300 has been my go-to soundbar to use and recommend. You really can't go wrong with this soundbar. It sounds great and it can easily fill a small or medium-sized room with sound. But more importantly, this soundbar has a ton of bass to it all by itself, which helps add that extra level of immersiveness when you're watching movies with this soundbar. But I thought it'd be fun to explore what else Bose has to offer. So today we are going to check out the Bose Smart Soundbar 900, which is a real step up from the Bose Smart Soundbar 300. Now, regarding pricing, the Bose Smart Soundbar 900 has a retail price of $900. Pretty reasonable if you ask me for a soundbar of this size. And for comparison's sake, the Smart Soundbar 300 now has a retail price of $450. Unfortunately, that is a $50 price increase from the last time that we covered the 300. Nonetheless, you still can't go wrong with the 300 if you're looking for a soundbar for a small or medium-sized room. Whereas the 900 is going to be better suited if you've got a larger room, and it's also got those super important upward firing woofers, which we will get into in a minute. Now, for simplicity's sake, in this video, we are going to be mainly focusing on the Smart Soundbar 900. Now, however, you can go ahead and either add one or two external bass modules and or extra surround sound speakers to the soundbar. But for the purpose of this video, we are going to be mainly focusing on the 900 and seeing if it's worth upgrading from the 300. Nonetheless, if you want to pick either of these two soundbars up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch shelf down below. I've made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And if you've been watching me for a while, you know I can be very particular. So I'll only set my name on something that I'm really proud of. Now first, let's talk about the design of the 900. Now this soundbar has a very subtle design to it, very similar to all of Bose's other soundbars. It's got a metal grille on the front with a very subtle indicator light on the front, which really only lights up when you're adjusting the volume, going through the setup process, or interacting with your voice assistant. Other than that, the 900 mostly disappears when you're watching content in a dark room, which is good because soundbars should be heard, not seen. However, I say the 900 mostly disappears because depending on your setup, this glass top could cause a reflection. Now, I know this is a very minor detail, but I thought I still point it out because it can be distracting for some people, because it is for me. This is definitely one of the first things that I noticed about the 900 when I went from the 300, because the 300 doesn't have this reflection going on because the top of the 300 isn't glass, it's just plastic. But when it comes to overall dimensions, the 900 has a length of 41 inches, it has a height of 2¼ inches, and it has a thickness of 4¼ inches. And it weighs in at 12.7 pounds. And for comparison's sake, here it is compared to the 300. The 300 has the same thickness and height, but is not as long. Now, you can wall mount the 900, but the wall mounting kit is sold separately, so don't go looking for it in the box. But now let's talk about what does come included in the box. Now, obviously, you've got your power cable, and thankfully, there is no external power brick that you've got to worry about hiding, which is especially good if you're thinking about wall mounting the 900. However, unfortunately, this power cable is pretty short, coming in at only 5 feet. So weaving it through your home theater setup might be a little bit of a challenge. Now, you also get a high-speed HDMI cable included with the 900, which I feel is important to point out because the 300 doesn't come included with an HDMI cable in the box. Now, the 900 also comes included with an optical cable, just in case your TV doesn't have an HDMI port that has ARC or eARC support. But just to be blunt, if your TV doesn't have ARC support, then I really think you should upgrade your TV before getting the 900. Because without ARC support, you're not going to be able to fully enjoy Dolby Atmos audio, which is the main reason why you're picking this soundbar up. And you're also not going to be able to use Alexa to control your TV. More on that later. Now, you're also going to see that there's a USB-C port on the back, but don't get excited. This port is strictly used for service, and ideally, you will never have to use this port. Now, back here, you will also see the audio jacks in which you would plug in your external bass modules and surround sound speakers if you get them. But more importantly, one port that is here that isn't on the 300 is an Ethernet port. Now, you don't necessarily have to use the Ethernet port on this soundbar because it does have Wi-Fi, but if you're planning on placing this soundbar in an area of the house with spotty Wi-Fi, and if you plan on regularly streaming to it using AirPlay or Chromecast, or if you plan on regularly using it as a smart speaker, then it might be worth it to you to use that Ethernet port. But again, just being blunt, if you have spotty Wi-Fi, then I would recommend that you upgrade your wireless network. Because if you upgrade your wireless network, then this is going to improve your streaming experience. Your content won't buffer. But you don't have to use Wi-Fi on the soundbar if you don't want to. But if you still want to be able to use this soundbar as a normal speaker and just use it for listening to music, then you can always just connect to it using trusty old Bluetooth. However, personally, I do recommend that you connect the soundbar to Wi-Fi, so this way you can just AirPlay to it or cast to it more easily. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this soundbar has Alexa support, and it also has Google Assistant support, so you can use either voice assistant. However, only Alexa will allow you to use your voice to control your TV using Bose's Voice for Video feature. Alexa, watch Comedy Central.
Tuning to Comedy Central, now airing Seinfeld.
So if you're someone that's looking to add voice control capabilities to your TV, you can do that through Alexa. But now let's talk about what's under the hood of this soundbar. The 900 has a center-mounted tweeter, which is then flanked by a total of 4 woofers, which they themselves are flanked by bass chambers, and at each end of the soundbar there is an upwards-firing woofer. And thanks to these upward-firing woofers, you're going to be able to enjoy Dolby Atmos audio. Now basically what Dolby Atmos audio is that it's an audio format that allows creators to individually place sounds in a 3-dimensional space. So let's say you're watching a movie and there's a helicopter on the screen. Now if the creator chooses to, he can make it sound like that helicopter is above you. Whereas let's say with the 300, that helicopter is going to sound like it's coming at you, or it's going to sound like it's at the same level as you. Now, all content doesn't automatically have Dolby Atmos. Dolby Atmos has to be used by the content creators. But even if you're watching content that doesn't have Dolby Atmos, the 900 will automatically upsample your content and try to add verticality to it. Simply put, the 900 is going to better immerse you in your content because it is going to add a sense of verticality to your audio. Whereas with the 300, it's not going to be able to have as much verticality because it doesn't have those upward firing woofers. What the 300 does have is a center-mounted tweeter, which is then flanked by a pair of woofers, which are then flanked by a pair of bass chambers, and at the end of this soundbar, there's a pair of 45-degree woofers, which allows the soundbar to cover a very wide area with music. Now the 300 is definitely going to get the job done, but you're not going to achieve the same level of immersiveness as the 900.
A broken glass while I'm thinking in my head. I mind my own, I don't even break a sweat. Oh, this madness is insane. Why you still live in vain? I'm not the one, you're the victim of your own mistakes. It's sad to hear the lights under the street lights, under the street lights. nothing on my mind. This madness is insane. Why you still live in vain? I'm not the one, you're the victim of your own mistakes. It's sad to hear the lights under the street lights, under the street lights.
Now, in the sound test, both of these soundbars were playing with their stock EQs. The TV was playing at max volume, whereas the 900 was playing at 70% volume and the 300 was playing at 85% volume. Now, obviously, any soundbar is going to sound better than your TV's built-in speakers. Your TV most likely just has a pair of downward-firing speakers that bounce sound off of the table. They probably don't get too loud, and at higher volumes, their bass just becomes a rattling mess. Now, from a performance standpoint, the 900 is going to get noticeably louder than the 300. That's why I recommend the 900 if you've got a larger room. However, when it comes to bass, the 900 does have more bass than the 300, but it doesn't have a whole lot more bass than the 300. Nonetheless, both of these soundbars will supply a decent amount of bass all by themselves, which is going to help immerse you in your content. But definitely, if you do want a lot of bass in your content, then you are going to want to get a bass module for either of these two soundbars. However, one area where you will notice a big performance difference between the 900 and 300 is just going to be the instrument separation. The 900 sounds much more open than the 300, whereas the 300 does sound rather narrow by comparison. So just the better instrument separation alongside the upper-firing woofers found on the 900 is just going to give you more realistic and much more spacious sounding audio, which is going to do a better job of immersing you in whatever movie you're watching. Now, don't get me wrong, the 300 sounds great, and if you were to attach a bass module to it, it's also going to do a great job of immersing you in your content. However, the 900 does a better job of placing individual sounds and making things sound more realistic. The real question is it worth paying a premium for better immersiveness? Personally, for me, it is. But next up, let's talk about the app. Now, for starters, you can control your soundbar through this app. You can adjust the volume, see what's playing, and change the source. And you also get a physical remote included with the 900, which is just a nicer version of the remote that you'll find on the 300. And it also has some additional number buttons which you can set preset stations to. But to be blunt, I almost never use these remotes. However, through this app, you can also go in and adjust the EQ on these soundbars. Now, personally, I do like to raise the center channel on the soundbar so that dialogue is more pronounced. I also like to raise the bass a bit on these soundbars, and I also like to raise the high channel on the 900 so that the verticality effect is more noticeable. But also, through this app, you can set up the adaptive EQ on this soundbar, and this is something that isn't found on the 300. Basically, you plug in this thing into the soundbar and you put it on your head. And for the record, it is not big head approved. Now basically what you're going to do is that you're going to sit in different areas of the room where you will sit, and the soundbar is going to play some sounds, and then it's going to calibrate itself. Now even though this isn't something that's unique to Bose, and I do feel that you should be able to use your phone's microphone instead of using this microphone, I do highly advise that you go through the setup process when you first get your soundbar, just so that it can get calibrated to the furniture in your room. And this is a calibration process that you would want to do again if you were to move around the furniture in your room. But finally, let's talk about pairing the soundbar up to other speakers. Now, if you've got other Bose Smart Soundbars, or if you have other Bose Smart Home speakers lying around the house, you can sync them up all together and get them to play in sync. But also, thanks to Bose's Simple Sync, you can also pair a Bluetooth device to the soundbar and get them to play in sync. Now, you can pair a portable Bluetooth speaker up to it, or you can also pair a pair of headphones up to it, and this way you can fully enjoy your content late at night without having to worry about waking anybody up. Now, Bose's Simple Sync works just fine with most other Bose products. That's why I'm using the Bose QC45 and Bose SoundLink Flex as an example here. However, technically, Bose's Simple Sync is supposed to be product agnostic, so you should be able to pair other non-Bose products up to your soundbar. However, in this example, I just can't get my Sony 1000XM4 to pair up with this soundbar. So what I'm trying to say is Bose's Simple Sync is cool and all, and it should be able to work with most products, but if you want to be on the safe side, you might want to use it with other Bose products. But with all that being said, the Bose Smart Soundbar 900 is a great sounding soundbar. Thanks to its upward firing woofers, you're going to get a great sense of verticality out of the soundbar. And thanks to its sheer instrument separation, your audio is going to sound more realistic, which is just going to improve the overall immersiveness when you're watching a movie with the soundbar. And even if you're not explicitly watching Dolby Atmos content, the 900 will automatically upsample your content and add in that extra level of verticality. Overall, if you're thinking about upgrading from the 300 to the 900, the main upgrades that you'll find on the 900 is way better instrument separation, it is going to get noticeably louder, and is going to have a little more bass. Now, don't get me wrong, the 300 is going to get the job done no problem, and if you were to pair a bass module to it, it should be able to satiate most people. But with the 900, what you're getting is much better immersiveness. And if immersiveness is very important to you, then I say, yeah, go ahead and upgrade to the 900. However, with the 900, I do highly recommend that you pair it with a bass module so that the added bass can complement the added instrument separation. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know, I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something that I'm really proud of.